of it, but
I think it's really more the general idea, and I think we have a little bit of latitude to tweak it. The concept was really just to be sure that we had a tool for considering the community values as we work through a lot of important decisions. And Sue created this as a tool for us to use to do so. I don't think it's a problem with some adaptations to the tool so that it's more useful for the specific purpose that we're intending to use it for. But that's really the idea, was just to, it could be easy to lose that work that happened in the fall, and it's critical not to lose that work. So I think that was all that was about, was to try and keep that in the forefront.
yeah, I think it will be helpful for that purpose.
Jeff, you said that you attended quite a few of the community involvement sessions with Sue.
Yes.
That was my recollection. So
Yes.
yeah, so a lot. I mean, it's a good summary of the highlights that she captured, or the communications group captured out of those meetings.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Kevin, I'm gonna you'll still see me, but I'm gonna step away and might have to take my audio and video off for a minute. I'm gonna try and reach out to John and just see if there's a hiccup with him getting in or what the issue might be, so that we're ready to have him go.
Okay.
I think it's a good tool. I don't know, do we have to do an action item on it, or is it all?
I made it an action item, particularly if the discussion involved modifications. I think we should have some consensus on the modifications. If everybody's agreeable with that, it's a good yardstick as it sets, then I'm not exactly sure how formal we need to get with it,
Are we trying to when we are using this tool, are we all having the exact same, like, we think that is a 7, because it's a long range about what the scales are. So which is fine, but I'm just curious if we are going to be using this tool and then reporting out on where as a group we fell on the scale. Is it, a group decision on that, which is fine by me, but.
So how's everybody else feel about how to calibrate?
I thought one way it might be interesting to use is if we it kind of is a quantitative confirmation of a qualitative process. And I thought if we each came up with our own ideas of where we were, and then we plotted each person's response, for example, on academic excellence, and see where the group comes out. Maybe sometimes we would be all closely aligned, and maybe sometimes we would be all over the place, and then we'd have to talk about the all over the place responses more, and it would give us a quantitative background against which to have those discussions.
I like it.
Josh, you have any thoughts?
I agree with that assessment. I mean, it's really, it's just a tool, and I think it should be calibrated as if we start to find a wide array of responses. But it's a good starting point, and just the fact that it was responsive to the 2019 meetings is a great start. Which is a long way of saying I wouldn't adjust it at this time.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
I think that seems to be the sentiment. I think I would, from my point of view, I would rather people look at it with their set of values, if you will, and that will drive the skews or the variances that would fodder the discussion, as opposed to trying to come up with something to guide us to mark it up, if you will. Katrina.
I wonder too about when you start using it, maybe just do a couple at a time, because it seems to me that there's a lot that can be unpacked in terms of the language, right? So to come to some sort of an agreement on how you're defining, some of the vocabulary that's in here could be a rich conversation that you wouldn't want to have with all of them in one meeting, I wouldn't think.
It's true. And the thing that kind of tricked my mind, at least when you started saying that, is there's going to be a multiple options to use this thing. You could end up with a whole matrix of points and chartings, I suppose. Go ahead, Josh, if you have something to say.
Nope, not at this time. I'm trying to get the video feed running as well. So I don't have it. Unfortunately, I don't have anything to add at this time.
That's fine. I saw your box light up. I was just wondering.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no.
Not a problem.
Kevin, do you want a motion or not?
Sure. I don't know how you feel. I'm comfortable with just leaving it as an informal working document. I think there's enough consensus that we just use it and go ahead. But
Agreed.
I can get pretty sloppy sometimes with this kind of stuff, I suppose.
Do you want
Yeah,
to?
I mean, you may have one set of questions that deviate from this tool, and we may need to create more. So I wouldn't stay married to it to the whole. I mean, it's a good set of questions. So we'll want to stay consistent to it, but I don't think we should shy away from adding or even modifying the questions as we move along.
Well, I don't know, that along with the discussion with Kennedy were pretty much the primary things. I don't know if anybody's been really grinding their gears between the last meeting and this one of the meaning of life or anything with this topic.
Kevin, before I move on from that piece of it, do you want to have an action or a motion that just says we're going to use this as a working document or a dynamic tool or something to guide in our decisions? Do you want that or no?
I think, maybe if you can just say there's a general consensus to use it and that we will modify it as necessary through the process. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Is everybody happy with that?
Yep.
Well, I'm not much of a conversationalist, so I married one, so I don't have to say anything. It might be a short meeting.
I have other work I can do on a different screen. So if you guys don't mind, I'll just go do that for a while. And then if I hear you start talking, I'll come back. Oh, here comes Patrick.
So my update is I finally got John's cell phone number, so I'm going to call him right now. My update is I hope to have an update.
Does everyone have their gardens in the ground yet?
Yes.
Well, I got a great tip from our facilities guy who used to spend some time at Centennial with their guy, and soaking grass seed for a couple of days before you put it out takes about 3 or 4 days off getting grass growing.
Wow.
Oh, no
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah.
Nice.
I didn't do the experiment warm water versus cold water. So if you wanna go out a little further with it, it's on you. But
That's great to
made
know
a huge
because
difference.
my plow ripped up my lawn.
That's what I was fixing, a bunch of plow cuts and
Well, looks like John Kennedy's here.
Yeah, my wife had me building raised beds a couple weeks ago, and being an architect, of course, I took it to the nth degree. So that's been my house project last couple weeks.
All right, I think we have John on now.
Hello?
Having some video challenges, but I bet we have audio.
Can you hear? Ask me if you can hear. me.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I think we've got you, John.
Okay. All right, the video isn't up yet, but let's, okay. Well,
I don't know why we can't.
it's, if you can't end up seeing me, that's probably better for all of you anyway.
As long as I can hear you. All right.
As long as you can hear me, and hopefully this will come up within a minute or two. For some reason, I've used it several times, but for some reason today it's not behaving. So as long as you can hear me, we can start up. I don't want to delay you waiting to look at if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I think that'll be fine.
Okay. Huh.
Now,
Yeah.
Patrick, John knows the charge or the action of this group and is familiar with who's here, or should we do some?
He's somewhat familiar with who's here. I think some introductions would be great, and then maybe give John a minute to just sort of give an overview of NESDEC and the work, and then maybe some Q&A. Does that sound reasonable to everyone?
Okay.
Yes.
So John, we have a subcommittee of the board, school board, and Patrick's administration has three members, I think, and we've got a couple community members and 2 school board members on this group, and we're trying to find our way through some challenges that, both the administration and the school board, as well as the voting members of the district, are concerned. So, Patrick, if you want to introduce your team, and then we can just introduce the community members and the board members, I guess.
Sure. Maybe I'll turn it over. Katrina, why don't you go first, and then Floyd, you can go next and introduce sort of yourself and your role, and anything else you might like to add.
Hi, John. I'm Katrina DiNapoli. I am the assistant superintendent for our district. I'm also a Moncton resident, so in the 5 towns, I've had kids go through the schools. Thank you for joining us.
Okay.
John, I'm Floyd Davison. I'm the business manager for the district. I'm a Bristol resident, doing my darndest to keep kids in our school system. And I'm really glad to have a chance to chat a little bit about this.
Okay.
And by that, he means literally. Floyd has many children, and we are thankful for every one of them.
Well, that's great.
Patrick,
And I'm Superintendent Patrick Green. We've talked on the phone a couple of times, so thanks for being here.
then Jeff.
Okay.
I'm Jeff Miller. I'm a community member. I live in Lincoln. My children did not go through the 5 towns schools. I am a mentor of a 4th grader, currently a mentor of a 4th grader in Lincoln.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Josh.
I am another community member. I live in Bristol. I went through the system first through Moncton and then at 7th and 8th at Mount Abe. I am also an architect at Freeman French Freeman.
Yeah.
Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Ella Pearl. I'm a board member. I did Act 46 with the school district back in the day, and I live in New Haven. I have kids in the school district, and I actually am a science teacher in a different school district.
Ah, okay.
And I'm Kevin Hansen. I'm on the board. I'm a relative newcomer. I've been on the I've been involved with school boards probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years now. And I'm a Bristol resident. My wife and I went to Mount Abe, or through the 5 Mount Abe Unified District schools, as well as our daughters.
Ah.
So, we've been hanging around for a while.
Okay. All right. Any others?
That's it.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm John Kennedy, and I'm with NESDEC, New England School Development Council. And I first of all want to take this opportunity to compliment the district for engaging in an in-depth planning analysis that considers key factors that you folks are going to be looking at that will have an impact on your future long-term planning. That's a great move on your part to be going into the depth of this analysis before you make key decisions. And I'll be honest with you, some districts don't do that. And so it's a very important move on your part. And I'd also like to recognize and compliment the superintendent and the team for his assistance and leadership in organizing the steps in the process thus far. It's been very helpful and helped to clarify the info related to the goals of the project and the process, and that made it very helpful to us as we were moving forward. I also want to compliment the school board members and community members who are participating. I think it's great that you are willing to take the time to do the research and to participate and share your thoughts in these very important decision-making processes that I had, and that's a great move. Today, I'm going to just try to go through with you the information on the project that we have just engaged in and give you some details of the process, and then I'd be happy to take any questions that you have once I get through it. And I'm going to try to give you some of the major points that are a part of the process. So first of all, just briefly, some information about NESDEC. NESDEC is the New England School Development Council. It originated over 70 years ago out of the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And it is currently a nonprofit organization which operates out of Marlborough, Massachusetts. It's interesting, this past year, 2019, we had over 250 member districts in the organization. And they are throughout New England. And one of the things we're really pleased about is that over 50% of those districts have been members of the organization for over 10 years. And so that tells us that they're feeling that the services that they are receiving are, very effective and helpful to them. And with regard to the services that we do provide, we are involved with executive searches for districts, for superintendencies, or for principalships. We assist districts with strategic planning, but we also are involved, and this is where I'm particularly assisting with members of my team, with annual enrollment projections. We do over 280 80 sets of enrollment projections each year for districts throughout the New England area. And also demographic studies. And these occur when when a district is going to be making some very important decisions based on enrollment. And so we look at factors that could be affecting enrollments down the road. And lastly, we do facility best use studies, which we are also going to be working on with you folks. So over the course of the next few months, all of those will be combined. And after we communicate with the district's leadership and the leadership team, we will then typically present a final analysis or final project. And the project will include a demographic analysis. And we're going to start working on that very soon. And the demographic analysis will analyze factors that are likely to have an impact on your enrollments over the course of the next several years. And the key factors that come into play there are births, obviously. Those children born this year are most likely to be part of your K class in 5 years down the road. And so that's a very important factor, those that are born within the district. But also there are move-ins and there is new construction. So we always are asking the district for information, and we will be receiving that from our contacts for each of the member communities, government contacts, who would be able to provide us with permitting history for primarily single families in small towns, but also if there's anything in the works with regard to condominiums or anything in the works with regard to apartments. And so we get usually in touch with either the building or planning departments in each of the communities based on the recommendation of the superintendent. And he provides us with the contacts. And, you know, in terms of condos or things like that, typically you're not going to see a lot of that construction in your area. But if you did, many people might say, well, you know, most parents and with children aren't going to be living in a condo. But the other side of the story is multiple folks in the 60 and over group are selling single families in order to move into a condo. And so that's a factor that does come into play if that is. And we also ask for recommendations for contacts for local realtors so that we can get an indicator of existing home sales within each of the 5 communities. And that will give us some other detail. We take all of that information along with information from the town governments with regard to any potential zoning changes or any potential major changes in employment, either employers coming or going. And those factors are then factored in to the adjusted enrollment projections. And the enrollment projections are based on information we receive from the district and also information that we may be able to get from the state. And those will be typically the enrollment projections are on a grade level basis, and they go out over a 10-year period from the startup. And along with them, there are other details which we provide, which tend to be helpful to the districts. So you'll be getting those, and those are a part of the project. And that way you'll have some key information in terms of what does the future look like with your enrollment growth or lack of growth. And then the other piece is the facility study. That's the last part. And so you can see where we're heading here. It's very important to know what's the enrollment future look like, but it's also extremely important to know what is the capacity of each of the school buildings. And we base that on a process that has been tremendously effective in terms of analyzing student capacity based on grade level maximum class size numbers, but also based on the ability of the facility to meet current and future programming needs. And obviously within a district, it is, and we've read your studies and your reports, the superintendent has done that. And we've read the information on several of those, and we will be looking at them as we go through. And we can see that you know, there are some definite factors that come into play. Communities wanting a school within their town, and so on and so forth. But also, we also know that you folks have emphasized equity, and therefore equity of programming. And so our facility analysis is based on multiple factors. And we will be providing that information to you in the facility study, and we will provide you with what we call a current operating capacity of the building and also a planned operating capacity, which takes into consideration, for example, it probably doesn't occur in your district, but in some cases we see students who are receiving physical therapy in the hallway on a mattress or something along those lines, which is not suitable. And in many instances, we see that small group instruction may be occurring in converted closets. And so any of those situations, we would make an adjustment to the school's capacity in order to accommodate programming. And then we give you a planned operating capacity, which takes that into consideration. On the other hand, if some buildings have some rooms that are vacant, we add that to the planned operating capacity. So bottom line is, those two pieces of the project done, we have a look at enrollment and what it's going to be. B, we have a look at the school's capacity, and also taking into consideration either overloads or situations of equity issues. And then C, the last part, is we will be taking a look at the 4 various alternatives that you have listed as a part of the 4 scenarios. And we also will be including an analysis of a possible high school union with Addison Northwest. And so there will be minimally 5 different alternatives that we will explore. And the thing we want to absolutely are dedicated to making sure that our analysis is objective. So with each of the options, we will provide to you an objective analysis of what we believe are the challenges and the advantages associated with each option. So that's a very important point. There are a couple of other points that we wanted to make. One is that this does not, the study does not include a systems analysis, meaning we don't take in and examine your furnaces or the pipes or things like that, but we do ask for information from the building principals and others concerning the condition of various systems. And if there are any major system issues, we ask that we be notified. And we send a template to each principal with a list of questions with regard to that, with regard to class sizes, square footage, the various space utilization within gym, cafeteria, art, science, so on, so that we get a complete and full info on all of that, the roof or things along those lines. That's something we rely on. We also don't get into, we do not do a safety security study. If something does come to our view, we would certainly mention it, but that's not a key piece of the study. And so it's important for you folks to be aware of that. We don't do a cost analysis of what it would cost to add to a building or to replace parts of a building, but we do certainly mention if those are things that are needed, and then you'd have to be talking to either an architect or someone who does that. So that's the way it gets done. And once it's completed, you folks would get a chance to review it. We would, if there are some concerns, we would certainly address them. And then we do a presentation and also hard copies of the document. The presentation is usually done in this particular case, given the world that we're living in now, it would be probably a video presentation, and I will guarantee you next time, unfortunately, you would have to look at me. But it's going to be, we make it work. We make it work. So it's something that we will be able to do. And once we have received the templates from the principal, and before we have done all of this other that I've just mentioned, we will be back several times in touch with the principal with follow-up questions, and we will ask the principal if there are some concerns that have been expressed within the building. We will ask the principal either for a video walkthrough or for photographs that would show us what he had or she had talked about. So that way we have a clear view of what has taken place. So that's essentially the process. And we have found it to be very successful. And we believe, and we are completely dedicated to making sure that it is accurate and that it provides key information to the district so they can move forward. So I'd be happy, that's essentially the process. So if there's anything, happy to answer any questions related to it. And or if I don't have the answer today, I would definitely get back to you if I had to do a little bit more research.
John, I apologize for not bringing this up earlier, but can you talk to us a little bit about your background prior to NESDEC?
Sure. I've been with NESDEC for going on 14 years. And I have been primarily working with them on strategic planning, on the facility studies, best use studies, and on the enrollment projection portions. I have not been involved with them with the executive searches, and that's another team that works on that. My prior background to that was I was a teacher in public schools for approximately 25 plus years, and then an administrator with regard to instruction and planning in a school district. I also was a department chair for a period of years while I was continuing to teach. So I've had fairly extensive experience with the educational process and also with NESDEC.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think, John, I'm remiss that the extent of our public, so-called public today is Krista Sringo, who is also on the school board, and she is the chairman of the communications subcommittee that has done a lot of the work that you had a lot of positive things to say before. I guess the other thing, Patrick, if Krista remains the only person representing the public, I would ask the committee if she could just join in with Q&A as part of us if she so chooses.
Is everyone okay with that?
That's fine. That's fine with me.
Thank you.
And if there's any question that she has, over the course of the next several weeks that she feels need to be answered because she was not available today, that's fine. I'd be happy to take a call from her or an email and respond. And the same would be true with you folks.
I just promoted Krista to panelist, so she should have the same access everyone else does. So feel free to participate in any way you like, Krista. Video, no video, mute, unmute.
John, this is Josh. I have a couple questions, and apologies in advance if some of this has already been discussed before the meeting.
Sure.
First, that was a great intro, and I was hoping that you could send us maybe, I don't know if you're reading from something, maybe you could send us something so we could use it to incorporate to the meeting minutes and ease the meeting minute writing burden. I don't know if you have anything available.
Well, there's sure. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to interrupt. I kind of typed as you went and summarized, I think, the key points into the minutes. So if you don't worry about it.
And the video is being recorded as well, so we have that as a record.
Okay.
Thank you,
Okay, that's great. I didn't realize that was happening. The first question I have for you, John, is you had reviewed the 4 proposals that have been circulated amongst the committee group, and I'm assuming that the 5th option, that sounds like the one option that was discussed last time we met. Were there any obvious alternates that we did not capture in that list?
I don't think there's anything obvious. What happens frequently is as we go into, first of all, we'll get the enrollment projections. I have looked at the info that you had, that has been shared with me, and looks like the enrollments are flat and somewhat declining over a course of time. This would be K through 12. However, based on those projections that you folks had, but what we find is that when we take a look at and get the final info on the enrollments, and then when we go and get the templates back from the building principals and also get a look at, photos or video of problem areas, we may come up with some other analysis that would lead to different options. But I think that the 4 options that you folks have talked about initially are things that I think would be certainly things that we would look at and give consideration to. We often do see scenarios where there might be a reconfiguration and movement of students from one place to another, depending on the availability of space in a particular school. And so that's a factor that obviously comes up in a couple of your or possibly 2 or 3 of your scenarios. So that's something we may come up with a different alternative, and we don't you know, we would put it out there if we felt that after talking to you folks, there was interest in it. But it looks like you've got 4 potential scenarios, and we would take a look at all of those, and we would give you what is our objective view in terms of what would be the challenges and the advantages associated with each.
Okay, great.
Kevin, we did have another community member join, Tori Riley, who's also a principal at one of our elementary schools. I don't know if you want me to give her permission to speak, promote her to panelists. How would you like her involvement to look?
It's fine. She, certainly anytime she wants to pose a question or needs any additional information, be happy to help.
Is there anybody on the committee that would object to her joining?
Nope.
I think it could be advantageous to us.
Great. Tori, I'll give you, I'll promote you to panelists and you can participate in any way that you'd like.
John, another question from you. You had mentioned that no system analysis and no building analysis or facility analysis will be involved in your analysis in trying to establish parity. Do you suggest that is something that we establish outside of the forms that you're sending out to the superintendent?
No, the suggestion that we would have would be, let's say that there's, and we see this in many of our site visits. Let's say that somebody were to say that the heating system in the building is inconsistent. And that's true in probably 80% of schools. But if it's because the system is not functioning and there's a problem with the furnace or whatever might be the issue, that's a different story. And that would be something we would note in our report. But then in terms of getting an indicator as to, what would be the cost of having it fixed or replaced or those types of things, those would be the things that after the report comes out and provides you with details, that would be something that, the school board would most likely have to determine whether they would go forward and get an estimate concerning what that would cost. So in other words, things like that, leaking roofs and things like that, we don't, in our report, do research into what would be the cost of replacing the shingles on a roof.
Okay.
And John, when I was talking with Don early on in the process and trying to get a set, so Don Kennedy is another sort of representative from NESDEC, and when I was exploring with him the possibility of the variety of assessments that you guys do, he discouraged hiring an architect firm to do a more in-depth facilities analysis initially, because he said throughout your process, it may become clear which buildings don't make sense to continue to operate, in which case, why would we want to spend tens of thousands of dollars to do a facilities assessment on a building that becomes obvious that doesn't make sense to factor into the planning? Is that consistent with your thinking? And
that's right on. And that's why, this is a preliminary, but it's an important analysis because it provides you with extensive detail, the specifics of some of the alternatives that may be required, especially with regard to maintenance situations that need to may need to take place. And so that's to do that ahead of time, and then find out that, well, that's not something that you're going to move forward with because you're going to close the building or whatever it might be, would make the project extremely expensive to have bring in, you know. Other questions?
John, did you talk about timing with your involvement?
Yes, we are thinking that in terms of the early stages, the demographic analysis, we would move forward on that shortly, probably sometime during this month. And because the information is going to be relatively readily available. And then we would, prior to a final presentation in, let's say, November, after we have received the info on the 2020-21 enrollments, we would certainly update, and we always do update the demographic info that we have gained by recontacting folks just to see if there have been any major changes in the info that they had provided to us. And based on that information, you would see both the enrollment projection for that alternative with regard to grade levels in schools, and you would also see the capacity analysis, and it would be up to date.
I think Floyd had a question.
Thanks. John, I'm just curious if you're working as a team to have any modeling or projecting on the short-term impact of what COVID might do for enrollment. I know for us here in Vermont, so much of our budgets are based on enrollment, and it can shift so drastically in a small school. Is there anything that you guys are doing in that area that might be helpful for us as well?
Well, the analysis that we have is obviously, you know, it's based on the actual enrollments and also statistical information that we gain with regard to changing demographics. However, the different impacts of coronavirus are believed to, we believe that it's going to be short term in terms of overall impact on school enrollments. And the point that we also make is that almost any alternative that we provide to a district is certainly one which is going to require a major, any type of restructuring of facilities or things along those lines. The timeline is most likely going to be at least a couple of years for that alternative to be implemented, whatever it might be, unless it's, you know, leave all as is. And so it's, you know, by that time, a couple of years down the road, we think that the impacts of the corona virus and the pandemic are going to be not as strong as they will appear to be over the course of the next 6 months.
Any thoughts in terms of over the longer term with migration away from urban areas into a more rural area? And is there any way to factor any projection or current information on that on our numbers going forward?
Well, that's something we are going to be taking a look at over the course of the next several months. But I can tell you that we have just completed a study, or in the process of completing a study with a very small Massachusetts district. And the realtors have been telling us that because of the pandemic, many folks have been seeking to exit major cities. And especially, obviously, people who are of the boomer generation, but also the millennials. And the millennials are a major factor in the purchase of single-family homes now, finally now, because the millennial generation, as I'm sure you all know, was very slow to marry and very slow to have children. And however, now the oldest of them are reaching their late 30s, and many of them, realtors are telling us, many of them are, you know, aggressive buyers on the market today because they had been living in apartments or whatever, and now are looking for single family homes. And the other piece is the price range for millennials that is most on the national level and regionally, that is most appealing, is under the 260, 300 range, because many of them still have college debt. And so it's, you know, it's a factor that kicks in, and it affects both their application approval for mortgages, and also, you know, they just have a certain amount of money that they want to spend. But we are seeing finally that the millennial generation, especially those in their early 30s, are becoming strong buyers. So in answer to that question, you know, there are some factors. People are moving out of cities, and the millennials are moving to places that are affordable, more so than some of the ones. I mean, prices, and we just went through this with a study, but prices for single family homes in Hingham, Massachusetts, median price is now over an easy commute to Boston. And so people are paying that kind of money for a single family home if it happens to be 20 minutes outside of the city and in a place that's on the water.
This is Jeff. Can I ask a couple of quick questions if nobody?
Sure.
Just listening between the lines, you said something about videos of problem areas in schools. Are you going to be making site visits to these schools, or are you going to rely on these principal templates and videos?
Well, it's likely at this stage that we will be relying on the photos and the videos, depending on what the circumstances are in the fall. It depends on what occurs in the schools, and no one, at least I haven't heard it, and nobody on our team has heard that there have been definitive decisions made as of yet with regard to how student enrollments are going to be finally accommodated.
So I understand it must be most informative for you to visit a school when it's in session, so you can see how the facility interacts with humans, or vice versa. But even if the building is empty, wouldn't it be a lot more informative to look at an empty building than to look at a video of an empty building?
Well, it's a possibility, and the decision would have to be made once we see how this, how this rolls out over the course of the next 2 months and before school starts. We, certainly are considering that, and that has been our norm, but we also wanted to have available a possible alternative in the event that, there are still these issues within the school buildings.
And then I was wondering, with regard to your target due date of November, Patrick, how does that work for you with the other things that you need to tie into the facilities planning process?
We've talked about this maybe a little bit here, but maybe more at the community engagement committee level and some of the board level. I recognize the timing is what it is. I think it's delayed from what it would have been had we not had COVID-19, because NESDEC might have been able to get in this spring and see schools in session, et cetera. And it's something we'll have to work with, and we can work with, but it does create the possibility of a log jam in terms of, if I picture November, we're in budget building cycle for FY22. We are talking about long-term planning with our facilities related to this study, and possibly in a position of having to make some short-term significant decisions to get an FY22 budget that will pass. So I see this, I was actually talking with a building principal earlier today, the November, December, January window in the fall and into the winter is going to be a really, really, really interesting, we'll say, time as all of those things converge.
So I guess I'm wondering, John, if, in my mind, and I don't do what you do, so I don't know the answer, it would seem to me that a site visit would be extremely important. But if the site visit isn't going to happen anyway, then is there a reason why your report couldn't be brought forward? Because it doesn't make any difference whether the kids are in the buildings or not. You're going to look at videos, which can be done anytime.
Well, that's true. But what we wanted to try to do and hold off on was we know that Vermont has had a much lower level of impact in terms of actual confirmed cases than many other parts of the country. And we were thinking that, we didn't want to rule out completely a site visit if when we get to the fall, there are indicators that we could do that. And so what we said, I believe, in the proposal was it is likely that this would be difficult, meaning the site visit would be difficult or challenging. Therefore, we wanted to provide an alternative that would give us the information that we would need. And so that's why we came up with the remote site visit alternative. And we were thinking that we would till, as to where things stand within the school district so that we could make a final determination along those lines.
And from my perspective, as much as it creates what could be a log jam in the fall and early winter, looking at the trend, like we're trending pretty favorably right now. So it makes sense to me that we give this some time to develop and see what the fall might look like, because if giving it a couple of months to see how the fall might play out, if that opens up an opportunity for a site visit with kids in buildings to some capacity, because this information is going to have an impact on decisions that will last years and years, I think it's worth giving it those few months and giving it the time it needs to be as thorough in this process as we can, while also recognizing that, we're on the precipice of a financial crisis, or in the midst of one. I guess that's a matter of perspective. So there's some time sensitivity to this, but I think a couple of months, it's worth letting that play out to try and get the best information we can.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Anybody else have questions, comments? I've got just a couple. I've just got a couple of things. I'd like to make. I'll make a comment. And John, before you were talking, we've given you these 4 scenarios, and you seem to see that they hold water to some degree, but you may come up with some other ones. But I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that we don't want to preconceive your activity with these 4 scenarios either. These were sort of started out through our planning community engagement process as, here's some things that Patrick and his administration had started off with, and it's a good point of discussion. And maybe they're brilliant to begin with, because there's been not a lot of modification or a lot of punting or kicking of the tires and changing things on them. But I would think we would certainly want to be open, to have you kick the tires on those, but also be open-minded about maybe there's something else that may transpire, or there's an amalgamation of some of those scenarios as well. And I guess the question for you would be, we're doing some preliminary footwork, and at some point we will be engaging with engineering services, architectural services to go to the next step. What is your experience, or what do you foresee the peel off or the phase down of your work and the phase up of an architectural firm, and what sort of a handshake, what sort of a follow-on activity do you sometimes have?
Well, we have worked on several occasions with architectural firms to provide the information, and then they take it from there. But essentially, the piece that we think is important is that the district be able to take a look at these alternatives and anything else that we come with. And there may be, depending on what we see as we go through, for alternatives, and then to analyze within the district and within your committee first, and probably then the district, what the most likely alternative or 2 alternatives might be that you would want to go forward with. And then it might make sense at that point to contact an architectural firm and come to some type of agreement for a follow-up piece based on that. But we have found with numerous districts that, it's much better to get the analysis done and much less expensive. And then we can say, well, this is, these are your challenges and your advantages out of this option. And the district may say, that's just, and there are some instances where we have indicated that we do not feel that a particular option is viable. And if we feel that, that it's just absolutely would not work because of whatever the circumstances are, we would make that known to the district in advance. And so it's probably less costly and more efficient way of moving things forward, so that you're able to narrow it down to just an option or 2 before you have to enlist the services of an architectural firm.
Agreed. says the architect.
Well, it's just, I mean, it's a matter of, having to deal with, 5 potential options, or going back to your earlier study where you had the community involvement. I think there were 7 or more that were initially considered. So there's already been a narrowing process.
Does anybody else have any other questions for John? It's
I have one more. This is Jeff. This is Josh again. John, we're in a very odd time in the world. Things are changing quickly. I don't know what your deliverable looks like specifically. Are you doing a phased recommendation potentially? During in the first year, maybe some initial recommendations to close the gap, and then what it looks like in 5 years or 10 years. Do you do that type of stuff where we can look down or look into the crystal ball and see what that means to go down one route?
In terms of enrollments?
I'm leaving the question. I'm
in terms of enrollments, do you mean?
Yeah.
Our enrollment projections. Our enrollment projections usually provide a 10-year sequence by grade level for the district. And so that would also, give you an indicator with regard to schools in the district. And obviously the first 5 years are the most accurate. They have a pretty good record of accuracy, but the first 5 years are the most accurate because you're dealing with, we know what the births are, and therefore you have a pretty good look at what your classes are going to look like. And we also have a pretty good indicator in terms of what residential growth will take place, and also what the situation will be with existing home sales and so on. Whereas when you get, beyond 5 years out, all of those things become less accurate.
Certain. Okay.
But you'll get a 10-year.
Yeah. Okay.
And you'll also get a 10-year history of enrollments, which looks like you've already pretty well done anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I think if we look at the agenda and try to keep to our time schedule, we're pretty much at the end of the discussion. If anybody else has any final questions, we can briefly do them, or else we can thank John and continue with our agenda.
Before you go on, I just wanted to say, if there's, I hope this was helpful, and I hope that it provided you with a clear look at the process. And so if you had any questions that were indicators that it was, you needed more information, just let me know. But you could always either through the superintendent or contact me, and I'd certainly our team would be happy to, provide any additional info if you need it.
Well, I think we're all quiet here. There's a little bit of chirping going on, but we certainly appreciate your time, and it's been very insightful. And we look forward to working with you. Okay, well, we're looking forward to it as well, and we will certainly be back in touch very soon. And we try to communicate frequently. And I hope you all get to enjoy the sunshine a little bit. I can see some sun in a couple of the windows there, so I'm thinking that must be out.
John, it was great to meet you.
Thank you very much,
Okay,
John.
nice to meet you all. Take care. Have a good one. Bye now.
Bye now. So moving on with the agenda, we've got member comments and public comments. I think we could combine them and just go around the table and give everybody their 3 minutes on a soapbox. Let's see, where should we start? Krista, do you have anything to add? Guess that's not Josh, or what?
Nope, she just unmuted, maybe.
Just unmuted. Krista?
But we can't hear you if you're speaking, Krista. I'm not sure. Oh, audio is not working for some reason.
Okay.
She said in the chat. Krista, if you want to type your comments into the chat, we can go around the horn a little bit, and I'll make sure to read what you've typed. That way, we can give you a chance to type in there, and we can have your voice heard that way.
Okay. Josh?
Thank you. I just want to reiterate that the process that I've observed has been really holistically positive, and bringing on John at this time is really good. And I agree with his assessment that getting a design, an architect in the facilities, I think that's spot on. Decide what you want to do first that's consistent with population movements, and then make some smart decisions. I'm chomping at the bit to understand better what that all means, but I guess that'll all come out in John's report, and which is great. I am a little bit concerned about timing, but I'm available if meetings need to happen more frequently than once a month. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, Jeff?
I guess I also am a little bit concerned about timing. I reread the Advisory Facility Studies Committee guidelines and the essential questions before this meeting, just to refresh my recollection on what they asked. There's a lot of really deep work that needs to be done to answer those questions. And if we don't get the report till November, I think it's going to be really hard. But I'm the new guy here, so I'm concerned about that. But as Josh said, I'll make as much time available as we need to. But it looks like this report, which is preliminary to all those essential questions, that's just going to be the start of our work.
And maybe just a point of clarification around those essential questions. NESDEC's work will answer some of them, and many of those questions are not questions that NESDEC would be answering. They're questions that we'd have to answer with internal folks and internal information, perhaps consulting with somebody else, but mostly those are for us to find the answers to.
Yeah.
Which helps with the timing a little bit because we can control that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Sarah?
I found that really informative. I didn't watch because it just looked like a camera, so I just typed as he went. Hopefully that comes out okay. So I think I was actually pretty thorough, even though I said I wouldn't be. I'm actually not that worried about timing. I kind of feel like once they get started, I believe they're going to start asking all these questions, and that we will be, the team will be answering it, and there are some things we can't answer. So I don't, that they're going to answer, or Patrick's going to help answer. And I think it's going to be fine. it'll be, I agree November will be crazy, but I'm not going to worry about it. I think it'll be okay. I don't know.
Thank you. Katrina?
I too found that to be very informative. I feel like we've made a great choice in working with this organization for sure. And I too am trying not to panic about things months from now when it's easy to panic about things today. So I think we've got the right people on board. We're going to keep this momentum going, and we'll adjust if we need to get together more often as more information is needed to move us along. I think we're doing all right.
Thank you. Floyd?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm excited about the 10-year projection on numbers. You know, we've been going the last few budget cycles with showing that downward trend. And I like having an outside voice coming in to be able to really say, hey, it is what it is, whatever that is. I mean, if we've been totally wrong and it's going to turn and our number's going to come up, that would be good information to find. But I think that being able to drive that home a little bit as we're going through these next budget cycles, this one coming up, and then really the one after that, just as much, having this will be probably even more important than the facility side and best use.
Thank you. Patrick?
Yeah, I agree. We're going to get a lot of really useful information from an unbiased outside source that I think is going to be hugely valuable. And I actually I'm thinking very seriously about, so we're not currently a member of NESDEC. Some other districts in our region are. And so they do an annual enrollment study. So they would keep that information fresh and kind of roll as things change in our communities and whatnot. So I'm seriously thinking about becoming a member, and I want to give a lot of credit to the NESDEC team. There's a 20% discount for membership for members for these studies, that because we're sort of partnering with Addis Northwest a bit and we're looking at this a little more holistically, they're extending that 20% discount to us. So, you know, I'd give them a lot of credit for doing that when they don't have to, because it feels like the right thing to do. And I think there is, as he mentioned, 10 years is, a number of districts with them for 10 years or more. I think it's because they're getting good information, and that's what I'm hearing from my superintendent colleagues. So I'm excited about continuing to get that information going forward. And I agree that the timing is unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. And I'm not panicked a bit. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be emotional. There's going to be a lot of things rolled into it. But the reason I'm not panicking and this is why I don't panic almost ever. And those that have worked with me can attest to that. I have absolutely no idea where this is going to take us. But I am 100% confident we've built systems and structures and processes, and we have the right people around the right tables to engage in the kind of work that's going to need to happen going forward. And that gives me great confidence in our ability to receive the information, digest it, process it with our community. We have an outstanding community engagement committee that has set the stage for this really well, and we'll continue to do so. And I have Krista's comments here that I can read that kind of speak to this a bit as well. Not that it won't be challenging and won't be messy at times, but I feel confident that we're going to come out of this with something that's going to work for us. So I'm not panicked.
Thank you. I briefly, I think these guys are a great find, and I've been impressed through looking at their proposals, even the discussion today, with the quality and thoroughness of their investigation, if you will. I was initially, I won't say disappointed, but I had to have a correction in my assumptions because I thought we would end up further than we will at the end of their report. But their report, or their deliverable, if you will set us with some very objective information that will either confirm our assumptions or point us in a better direction. So I think this is a wise step, and I understand the hesitancy with timing and whatnot, but you gotta walk down a narrow path and make sure that we're doing the right thing, and there may be some intermediate corrections on that path as well. So I think that's my comments on it. So in closing, I think.
Kevin, I do have Krista's comment. She typed them into the chat.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
And I will add, in terms of the timing again, we're getting pretty accustomed to not having all the information we wish we had while we have to make some really hard decisions. That's something we do on an annual basis around budget building time. So for whatever that's worth, we've got some practice. So Krista's comments, she says, I look forward to hearing more from John's team. I wonder if there should be any messaging out to the community about the hiring of John's team and commencement of that work. It might also be good to think about where there will be opportunity for community input to set some sort of guideposts or timeline so that folks know that the opportunities will be coming. So case in point that we have, that those are great comments, and I think about the relationship between this committee and the Community Engagement Committee, ensuring that we have that kind of communication and that kind of community interaction throughout this process. So that feels great.
Should we consider in one of these meetings going forward, before this report comes, and as a way to get this information, bring some members of that Community Engagement Committee into this meeting, invite them so that they kind of get that 10,000 foot level of what we're trying to do, and they might be able to give us some advice based on what they've gotten for feedback from the community to help frame some of the questions we need to ask John.
And that's something, you know, what's going through my mind with that, Kevin. So we might be scheduled for this week on Thursday. So Kevin as the chair of this subcommittee, Krista as the chair of the Community Engagement Subcommittee, Dawn as the chair of the board, and myself meeting with our consultant that's been working with us through the fall to talk through exactly that. Like, what's the linkage here, and how do we move forward in a really sort of symbiotic way that that is keeping everybody in the loop and engaging the community and moving this work forward. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation about how that happens.
Thank you. So in closing, there's something, I lost my train of thought, but anyway, I guess at this point we're pretty much at the time that we need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Can you tell me who
Great.
just said that? I can't see.
Josh
We both
moved
see.
and Jeff seconded.
Sorry. I'm sorry, say it again.
Josh moved and Jeff seconded.
Thank you.
And it was about to be unanimous, I think.
Okay, great. So the next, I know what it was. Next meeting, scheduled meeting is Monday, 7/6. So it'll be right after the non-4th. Same time, 3 o'clock. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, guys.
You.
Girls.